this is relevant to every family. This is relevant whether your child's a wonderful sleeper. This is relevant if your child is not a good sleeper. This is relevant if you've been working on sleep and it's not happening yet, or it was working, but now we sabotaged it all because we went on a family vacation and we were co-sleeping. It doesn't matter, because we don't want to live in a box, and we don't want everything to just be so that, everything is just exactly as it is, so that we don't have to ever, navigate the ups and downs. We want to be able to be flexible. When my child's sick, I want them in my bed, and that's normal. So I was not afraid of the flexibility, because I knew that when the time came, I could go back to the parent I wanted to be. So what is it that you need in order to make sleep learning a constant? What is it that you need in order to be able to feel comfortable and confident through the ups and downs of life? And I have just that tool for you. In this video, I'm going to share a simple mindset tool that you're going to be able to take with you whenever you feel stuck, whenever things get thrown your way, in order to stay on top of the game and to help your child move in the direction of progress with their sleep. Before we jump into this mindset tool that I'm going to share with you today, I just want to talk really quickly about outcomes and how our brains are definitely focused on what the outcome is going to be. So we are highly invested in outcomes. That's just the way that we work, because that's the way that our brain gives us confirmation. So if I'm creating a yummy dinner for my family and my child eats, automatically that outcome becomes my confirmation. So I'm like, oh, he ate, so the food was yummy. Oh, he likes what I've made. And so we use the outcome to give us feedback. And that feedback is what we're looking for to feel like, we deserve our good person badge. But really, when we think about sleep as outcome oriented, we actually set ourselves up for disaster, because outcome oriented means we have this kind of if-then thinking. If I do this, then that will happen. If I am a good parent and I know what I'm doing, then my child will sleep. If I set up the bedtime routine exactly as it should be, then my child shouldn't argue or protest. And that's not the truth. And we all know that that's not the truth. I'm sure that you recognize that that's not the truth. But we still look outwards, we still look at outcomes as the ultimate confirmation. And when we think about sleep, sleep is actually what I call an infinite game, which basically means that there is never an end to our sleep. Thank God. We don't want it to end. We want to be human beings that are healthy and fully functioning and sleeping well for the rest of our lives. And same with our children. So when we can embrace a healthy mindset, and again, it's the mindset that we want to focus on, because when we focus on the outcome, we end up feeling defeated, and we end up becoming reactive, and we end up kind of looking at a certain something as the confirmation for how I am showing up. And I see this all too often in my practice. It just creates a feeling of defeat. So parents who are looking at a certain date or a certain amount of time or a certain amount of nights that they've put into the work around sleep learning, and they don't get the outcome that they have expected by that time, then feel extremely defeated, want to throw in the towel, and feel like, well, this is not working. As if it were like a little bit of pixie dust that we were like sprinkling over our child while they're sleeping, hoping it's going to work. Sleep learning doesn't work. Sleep learning is something that we take on as a constant. It's something that we embrace as the way that we're going to show up as parents when things get bumpy at night. And we do this around so many other aspects of our parenting. We recognize that it's not just one thing and we're finished. We recognize that we're going to have to show up, and we're going to have to keep showing up. It's never going to be done, and we don't want it to be done. We want to recognize that as our child grows and as our child experiences different situations and different challenges, that is an opportunity for us to grow together with them as parents. And we get to learn new things, and we get to evolve with them as they are growing. So the mindset shift is so essential if we want to be able to show up as a fresh parent every single time and not feel like, oh, this is my child and he's just a bad sleeper, and he's just, it didn't work with him, and he's the one that it didn't work for. And I mean, when we do that, first of all, our child knows exactly what we're saying, and they hear us even behind the scenes. They understand that they're the problematic child, or they're the child who doesn't succeed, or they're the child who takes too long. And that actually puts more of a burden on the child, as opposed to recognizing that this is a process. We have no say in the process. Nobody asks us our opinion of how long we think it should take for our child to be potty trained. Nobody ever asked me about that with my children. It took as long as it took. And with one child, it took almost no time. And with the other child, it took forever and always. And with the other child, we had accidents until 7 years old. And it just was the way that it was. And today I can say comfortably, all of them have grown up. None of them are wearing diapers. And they've all succeeded in potty training. So how long did it take? And what's normal? And how long should it take? And what if it doesn't happen by a certain age? Or what if it did happen, but then there's a regression? Does that mean that's it? It's over? Because those questions, I'm sure you're listening to me now thinking, that's ridiculous. Of course they're not wearing diapers now. They're teenagers, they're young adults. And when we can recognize that in real time, it's like a breath of fresh air for us as a parent. It's like we don't have to hold on to the outcome for dear life, waiting for it to happen. We can just invest in the process. And that's a much healthier mindset for everybody involved. So now we're going to jump into the tool. This tool that I'm going to share with you today is a mindset tool that comes from the GPS Within. I have shared with you before, the GPS Within is an internal navigation system that my partner Rivka Klein and I have developed together. And we have these fundamental principles within the GPS. And these fundamental principles, I like to think of them as universal laws because I find that they are always relevant, regardless. It doesn't matter if I'm working on sleep, doesn't matter if I'm having a situation with my husband, it doesn't matter what comes up. These are fundamental principles that always are truth. This principle I am sharing with you is a principle called inward-outward focus. Okay, so inward, meaning here within me, or outward focus. And the rule is that whenever we feel stressed, if we can observe ourselves enough or have a tiny bit of self-awareness to recognize, I am feeling stressed right now, you will automatically recognize that you are outward focused. When we are stressed, we are outward focused. That means we are looking outward for something to be okay. We are expecting the other, or we're expecting the world, or we're expecting the situation to be different than what it is. And we can just recognize that immediately causes stress. So I invite you now to just kind of take that with you and stick it in your little toolbox and start observing yourself and recognize. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your parenting. It could be in your life in general. When you feel stressed, you stop, you're like, oh my God, I feel stressed, this is not feeling so good. And then you're like, oh wait, I remember Dorit said something about inward, outward focus. Let me see what I'm focusing on. You will recognize you are outward focused. And that doesn't mean anything. It's not that it's good or bad. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just a human condition. We all do this, but it's an invitation. It's an invitation to say, it's time for me to turn the focus inward. And it's time for me to stop putting the focus on the outside where I have absolutely no control because nobody ever asked me, how the world should run. Nobody ever asked me if it's going to rain tomorrow or if it should rain tomorrow or not. No one ever asks me these things. And so instead of feeling like I'm a victim to my circumstances and poor me and I got to react because this is what happened, we can just recognize better to shift the focus inward. And focusing inward means that I'm putting the focus on myself because the only place that I have control is here. The only place that I have influence is here. And that's wonderful news because instead of feeling like, well, then, I'm just a victim to whatever's going to happen to me, I recognize that in any situation, I have agency. I can take ownership. I can take responsibility. And I can decide how I want to show up, which is so wonderful. I'm not left to having to be a certain way because of what happened to me. I can actually decide how I want to show up. And that to me is the most empowering thing about parenting, is that regardless of what's going on, regardless of how my kids show up, regardless of if they're having a tantrum or if they're having a good day or a bad day, that actually doesn't have anything to do with me. My focus is on how I show up. And so we're going to dive into what is it that we want to put our focus on in order to be able to hold on and anchor in focusing inward. let's take a look at how this relates to sleep, because we're talking about being outward focused. So how does outward focus fit into a situation where, let's say, my child has been learning how to sleep, I've been putting in the hours, we've been putting in the nights, we've been taking turns, my partner and I getting up, and it's been very, very demanding, which is normal because skills take time and we should not be invested in our child's pace. And together with that, it could end up being that you feel like we've been doing this for 3 weeks or we've been doing this for 4 weeks, and while we've seen progress, yes, okay, things are much, much, much better, but he's still waking at 5 a.m. and we're stuck there now. So that's it. It's never going to get better. And that stuck at 5 a.m. becomes the outcome that we focus on, and it sabotages all of the progress that we all of a sudden just threw out the window because now we're stuck on that. And isn't that what we do? We can have a wonderful day, and then one thing goes bad, and that's the bad day, as opposed to recognizing there were so many other things we can put our focus on. So when we're talking about sleep, it may play out in the sense that you've been working on sleep for such a long time, and you've put in the time and you've put in the effort, and it just is never a finished product. It could also be that you've been working on sleep and every other day something else comes up. It's like my daughter got called home from daycare because she has a fever now. And then just as she was starting to get better, we got back on track, and then all of a sudden she's teething. We see the teeth coming. And just as that started to get better, all of a sudden it's time for a family vacation. And so you just can't build momentum. There's always something that comes into the mix. And then when we look at it that way, sometimes we think, I think it's just better to throw in the towel and we'll just wait. We'll just wait. Maybe in a year it'll be better. Maybe it'll resolve itself. Maybe we actually don't have to do this, because every single time we start, we have to stop and then start and then stop. And so we're not really doing anything anyway. So what's the point? But all of that is outcome oriented. And as opposed to being outcome oriented, we can focus inward. And so now we're going to talk about what does it mean to be inward focused when we're talking about parenting, and what does it mean to be inward focused when we talk about sleep. So when I think inward focus, I use 3 anchor questions, and I use these 3 anchor questions in my life till today. And I will keep using these questions because I see and I experience how they move me forward in my life. So doesn't matter, again, here we're talking sleep, but it can be anything that you're going through in your life. There's going to be struggle. This is just part of life. We are thrown all types of struggles. I kind of feel like I'm living in a paintball game, and I'm like trying to make my way through the maze, and then I get hit with a paintball and I'm like thrown down to the ground and I got to get back up, and then I'm hit with another paintball and I got to get back up. Nobody thinks the paintballs are never going to come anymore. They will keep coming as long as I'm alive. So that's a wonderful thing, right? It's an opportunity. It's an experience that I'm having, and I can grow in that experience. These are my SOS questions. From SOS to SOS. From help to I want to be the source of stability at home. So being the source of stability means I'm automatically inward focused. And that means my first question in any situation is, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be in this situation? Who do you want to be in your parenting? Who do you want to be in your partnership? Who do you want to be at your work? Those questions allow you to gain a little bit of a space, of a gap to reflect on who it is you want to be. That's a very powerful question. I still think about that in my parenting today. And it's been 24 years, thank God, 24 wonderful years. And that question allows me to fine-tune my behavior always. So I'm not perfect. I'm a human. I make mistakes. I snap at my kids. I do dumb things, very dumb things sometimes. And I can pick myself up, and I can say to myself, I can actually show up differently next time. I can make an apology. I can say to my child, I'm so sorry. I actually snapped at you. And I remember my son at one point said to me, it was 9 o'clock at night. He was 15 at the time, I think. And he said to me, Mom, could I make some popcorn? And I was like, no, you're not making popcorn at 9 o'clock at night. And then I walked away and I thought, that's not who I want to be. That is way far from who I want to be. And I turned around in that moment and I looked at him and I said, I just snapped at you. I was totally not intentional in the way I responded. I was reactive. I'm tired. And so that's what came out of me. I didn't mean it. If you want to make popcorn, make sure you clean up. And that was the end of it. But we do that, right? We do that because we are running through life. It's like a marathon, and sometimes we're oblivious, and that's okay. When we're outcome oriented, remember, we said we react. And when we react, we are not anchored in our center. We are not focused, and we are not intentional. We are kind of like just reacting to whatever's happening, and whatever comes out of me, and maybe I'll regret it later. And maybe I'll be filled with guilt even because I yelled at my child, or because I showed up in a way that wasn't right for me. But it just happened because he triggered me. And then poor me, I'm victim again. But these questions bring us back to ourselves, and they bring us back to where we can have agency, have ownership, show up kindly, show up the way we want to be, and be intentional in the way that we're parenting our yummy, delicious, beautiful children. So, first question we said is, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be as a parent? Our second question is, how do I want to show up? And how do I want to show up means that I get to dream up how I show up in real time. Do you want to show up as that calm parent? Do you want to show up with kindness? Do you want to show up in line with your values? Do you want to show up as a parent who's centered and sturdy? I was actually doing this as a meditation, thinking about how I want to show up, visualizing how I show up for my kids, but not just visualizing how I show up for them when I'm taking them to the park, visualizing how I show up for them when they're screaming and when they're tantruming and when they hate me because I made a choice for them that they don't want to have to conform to. Or when I say to them, we're not going to stay up late today, and they actually want to stay up late. All of those opportunities to show up as the parent I want to show up as come from asking myself the questions and visualizing how I show up before I show up. So I think I've shared this with you in previous videos, but when my kids used to trigger me and I wasn't ready, because we're not always on call for everything that comes up, I would tell them, hold on, I have to go to the bathroom. And I would lock myself in the bathroom for a few minutes or seconds and just anchor myself in like, okay, you remember who you want to be? Okay, you remember how you want to show up? All right, flush the toilet and now walk outside. And then I would show up ready because I was in the moment mindful of how I'm showing up as opposed to being reactive. So these questions, while they may seem like, oh, it's just a simple question, it's just a question I can think about and then dismiss, when you use these questions as a constant, when you care enough about how you show up as a parent, and it's so important to you to act in accordance with your values and leave their dignity intact and leave your own dignity intact, then you can put focus on these questions day in and day out and day in and day out for the rest of your life. And it just helps you become a better parent. And then you feel so good about yourself. You actually feel good because in a time of chaos, you don't join the chaos. And in a time where your child is so defiant and he's just not having it and he's throwing all the tricks in the book at you, you can stay centered because you remember how you want to show up. And so I'm talking to you specifically now because this is relevant to every family. This is relevant whether your child's a wonderful sleeper. This is relevant if your child is not a good sleeper. This is relevant if you've been working on sleep and it's not happening yet, or it was working, but now we sabotaged it all because we went on a family vacation and we were co-sleeping. It doesn't matter because we don't want to live in a box and we don't want everything to just be so that, everything is just exactly as it is so that we don't have to ever, navigate the ups and downs. We want to be able to be flexible. When my child's sick, I want them in my bed. When my child has a fever, I remember I used to sleep with my child's face in my face. I wanted to know that they were breathing okay and that they were okay. And that's normal. But the minute they were better, I was back to what I knew I needed to do. So I was not afraid of the flexibility because I knew that when the time came, I could go back to the parent I wanted to be. And those questions anchor me in how I'm going to show up. So who do I want to be? I want to be a parent that is flexible. I want to be a parent that's kind. I also want to be a parent who's in the lead. I want to be in the lead. I'm not putting my child in the driver's seat without a driver's license and sitting in the back seat while he's reckless driving and my partner's sleeping on the couch and I'm waking up exhausted every day. I want to put focus on how I want to show up. And when I know, first you have to know how you want to show up because otherwise you're just reacting. Once I know how I want to show up, then I can actually act in accordance with that in real time when situations come up. So My child's being defiant. He's telling me he wants more tickles. He's telling me not to leave the room. He's telling me, Mom, right now, sit right there and tickle my back. And I can say to him, I know, sweetie, I know you want that. And we'll have more of that in the morning. Now it's time for sleep. And I can be confident in that because I'm aware of how I want to show up before I show up. And then what he's doing, which is the outcome, is no longer my problem because I'm focused inward. So he can do whatever he wants. And I always say kids have the right to their own voice. Who am I to say how you should show up? Who am I to say how fast you should learn to sleep? Who am I to say what you should be eating for dinner or not? But I can decide what I'm going to serve, and I can decide how I'm going to prepare it, and I can decide that I'm going to sit with you and make it a wonderful moment together. So I have a lot of power. What you actually swallow is not my business. It's actually not my business. And when I make it my business, then I'm actually showing my child that there is no steady, centered parent in the lead. I am just getting engulfed and getting sucked up into the situation. So, first question again, who do I want to be as a parent? Second question, how do I want to show up? And the third question, which to me is a way that we can continue to use these questions to keep us evolving and growing with our children, is a reflection question. It's a question that comes up after the fact. So I just had a whole hour falling asleep session with my child, and oh my God, it was so intense, and he was tantruming, and it was really, really hard. And wow, at a certain point, and I remember saying this once, I felt like I had smoke coming out of my ears. Yes, that's real. That is real. That happens. And I'm hugging you in that moment. And together with that, how did I show up? So that third question is, who am I becoming? Who am I becoming in the way that I showed up? Am I moving closer to who I want to be? Or am I moving further away from who I want to be? So if I want to be a parent who's very patient, calm, and consistent, yet firm, but in real time I lost it because I'm a human being and that happens, then in my reflection after the situation is over, I can recognize that moved me, that behavior of mine, that reaction I had, or that whatever it was that came out of me is moving me away from who I want to be. And that doesn't mean now I'm going to be like, oh, poor me, bad me, I'm so horrible, I'm such a bad parent. No, because we're human and it happens. But it does give me the opportunity to make a different decision next time, to be more intentional next time. And then I can show up ready because I already fell. And we say fall forward or fail forwards. Don't fail and then get stuck on the ground. You fail and you move forwards. Why are you moving forwards? Because your mindset is healthy. Because you recognize that through understanding that I'm going to get back up and I'm going to tweak. I'm just going to tweak a little bit how I show up for the next time. Then the next time I'll have an experience, then I'll reflect, then I can tweak, and I can just keep doing that. And it's like climbing a ladder. All of a sudden I'm stronger and stronger and stronger in my mindset. And when I'm strong in my mindset, my child feels safe because they have who to lean on. So inward focus is key for everything that you're doing. And these questions I'm sharing with you now around sleep. But remember, I told you they come from the GPS within. And the GPS within is a method that facilitates humans, not just parents. And so we have situations that come up in life regardless of whether or not we're parents. And these principles, these fundamental principles, are like universal laws. They're always relevant. They bring me back to myself. They bring me back into the driver's seat. And they allow me to be able to navigate my life more intentionally. When we're thinking about sleep and when we're thinking that things aren't working, we're generally looking at a specific moment as opposed to thinking how I'm going to show up. So I want you to leave with a practical tool. I want you to be able to actually implement this during times when things are not going your way with sleep, but also during times that things are going well with sleep. So the first thing is you're going to decide how you're going to show up. Remember that children wake up for interaction. We want to minimize interaction in real time. Whenever we're working on sleep, whenever we're in sleep mode or night mode, we want to minimize interaction. The minute something exciting goes on, that's going to snap our kids out of that sleepy zone. So you want to show up as a parent, let's say, who is super boring. You want to show up as a parent who knows exactly what we're going to do when we're trying to tend to our children at night. So let's just say, for example, that my child just had an illness and everything got thrown out the window because they had a very high fever and they were sleeping in my bed with me, and that was the end of all the good sleep that we ever had. Now my child's feeling better. So now I have a chance to show up again in the way that I want to show up. So how am I showing up? Am I showing up consistently? Am I showing up with intention? Do I act as the parent that's super boring in the middle of the night? Or am I coming in trying to, try this trick and try that trick? Because again, that's reactive. I think you can start to notice. It's like when I decide how I'm going to show up, when I recognize what I'm going to do in real time. So for example, I'm going to come into the room and I'm going to keep my eyes closed and my voice is going to be very low and I'm kind of a sleepwalking zombie. And every time I come in, I'm checking on my child and telling them it's nighttime to go back to sleep, laying them back down, and then walking out. Let's just say that that's my response. You can, of course, pick your own response. Just make sure that that response is consistent. Just make sure that that response is not too engaging. Make sure that that response does not entail that you are giving your child something, because anything that comes from the outside ends up becoming a crutch. And trust the process. So the more we show up intentionally and consistently throughout the night, things will take form. And we expect our child is going to protest, and we expect that they don't want to go back to sleeping independently, because of course they want the connection with us. But we know better. We know that in order for us to be our best selves, everybody needs a good night's sleep. So we put focus on what needs to happen, and we trust that showing up the same way again and again is going to take form, generally 4 to 5 nights. So I invite you to put the focus inward, to decide how you're going to show up, to decide what type of parent you want to be, and to actually show up with consistency and intention throughout the night. And then you will be able to reap the benefits of making the sleep and the experience that you're looking for happen for your child and happen for your family, regardless of how long it takes. Because again, we're not invested not in the pace, we're not invested in the outcome, we're just invested in how we show up. And as long as you show up, then your child wins. And that's what I always say. We can celebrate our child's success in the morning because we showed up the way we wanted to show up, not because they were someone that we wanted them to be. And that takes all the pressure off the child. This is just one small tool that I have offered you today that you're going to be able to start taking with you. Just stick it in your bag, put it in your pocket, and start implementing it already today. And you will see a shift in the way that things play out, because relationships are dynamics. And when you switch the way that you show up, it's inevitable that the outcome is going to shift. So instead of putting the focus on the outcome, you put the focus inward and it shifts the outcome. It's really actually mind-blowing. If this spoke to you, I'm inviting you to join me. I have a 4-day challenge coming up at the beginning of the month. It's the first time I'm actually pulling back the curtain on how we're going to get our kids to sleep without going through a whole long process with me. It's just 4 days. It's 4 intense days. I'm going to give you homework. We're going to have an hour or 2 together, depending if you join me for the VIP conversations and sessions beforehand. It will be wonderful. It will be a chance to meet with me live, discuss your situation, work through it together, come up with solutions, and start to feel like you're back in the driver's seat of your family sleep. I appreciate your support. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I will see you next time.